What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk to you about ChargePoint. It's been a while since I've done a ChargePoint video, so I want to go over some of the data points, what short's been doing, and then aside from that, some of the key things that I was really looking for from the recent earnings. So I want to go over all the things that you need to know, but first make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So ChargePoint went down 6.53% on Friday, 60 cents the low, 65 cents the high. So the market was dragging it down. After hours, it did go up 1.83% because of their 10K being submitted. Take that with a grain of salt, of course, because all it takes is a couple $100s to really move ChargePoint this much. But in my personal experience, any company submitting a document after hours on Friday is a instant red flag, and most of the time they're just trying to bury it with the weekend. So again, take that into consideration. So I'm going to go over that in a second, but aside from that, just the macro conditions have really been affecting ChargePoint. Their earnings, when they did come out, these were some of the key metrics. So I didn't really do a ChargePoint video because I was waiting for this 10K to actually come out for us to see a little bit more detail, because looking here, they've done two major reorganizations. The gross margin, operating expenses, all of this was in theory going to be better. So we kind of already knew that. Expectations for revenue was very low, and they still didn't really hit the mark, unfortunately. But nonetheless, though, when it comes down to their earnings, there was a couple key things that I was really looking for. And one was, as simply put, is this outstanding share count. I wanted to see what to what magnitude they were diluting. So ultimately 456 million as of January 31st, 2025. This shows more of a easy projection of and what has been happening with their outstanding share count. Last disclosure was 435 million, so it went up roughly 20 million, but nonetheless, like, their revenue isn't enough for their operating expenses, so they are going to be needing to resort to more and more dilution. So that's kind of the unfortunate thing. The writing's been on the wall for a while now, but nonetheless, this was one thing that I was really looking at for their earnings, and that was, as weird as it sounds, their outstanding share count. Secondly, I wanted to take a look at, so in this 143 page document, it is partnerships. So as I've done videos on this in the past, the only saving grace for ChargePoint was going to be if they get acquired or some sort of joint venture, strategic partnership, something in that capacity. There was absolutely no hint at that, because like I said, ChargePoint doesn't make enough. Even with them restructuring, they're still burning through a lot of money, which in reality is going to resort to more and more dilution. Shareholders are going to, retail is going to be buying up ChargePoint, and that's going to be the basis of their financing. So ChargePoint's going to be losing a lot of their equity, unfortunately. So, and on that note, as weird as it sounds, they actually did have this up here. So in their document, they actually had a chart. I'm not really sure why exactly they had this chart there, but I'll give you a quick kind of show you that. So never really seen a company do this, but it shows 5-year comparison for the total return. Has ChargePoint, then it has the S&P midcap, S&P application software, and S&P technology hardware. This is ChargePoint. So they had a good year, and then it just went down. And then this chart right here kind of shows that. So if you had $100 in ChargePoint in 2020, you now have $9.62. I'm not really sure why, again, they're really putting this on there. There was a hell of a lot more risks included in this document, in this 10K, than normal. So definitely they are somewhat cautious about the foreseeable future. But nonetheless, going back to my point, I think that having a partnership would be ideal and be ChargePoint's saving grace. But unfortunately, like I said, there was no hint. So that was my second one. Third one was, within this document, any hint at bankruptcy. And luckily enough, there was no hints whatsoever of bankruptcy. A lot of risks, like I mentioned, were added. So they anticipate more volatility, clearly negative volatility for the foreseeable future, but not bad enough to prompt a bankruptcy. So That's maybe a good thing. Obviously, you do your own due diligence at the end of the day. But yeah, like I said, I'll go through this a little bit closer. So I went through some of the key highlights that I wanted to really look at in ChargePoint's case, but there's still 143 pages in this document. So I'll go through that and maybe see exactly why they potentially did submit it after hours on Friday, just to maybe see if they're trying to hide something or whatever else. But shorts on Friday did return 57,000 shares. 25.68% of the free float is being shorted. Works out to be 108.4 million shares overall are being shorted. Cost of borrow average is 18.69. Utilization is 95.09. And then just overall, as you can kind of see, shorts did get in after their earnings to roughly a peak of 30.27. Since then, for whatever reason, they did and have been returning quite a lot. Doesn't logically make that much sense why they'd be returning, given the kind of macro conditions have really worsened for the most part. But let me know your general thoughts on that in the comments below. Aside from that, though, looking at options, this has never really been that popular, but 68,000 in calls, 18,000 in puts. 64% of all the options being done are optimistic in nature, and that was all from Friday. This one right here stands out. It's only 42,000, but that does make up for a good chunk of the overall day. Between 10:20 and 10:25, there was this. So if we kind of pop this open, orient it based on premiums, all very bullish. Looks like 250 for January 2026. So big money is feeling as though ChargePoint is going to be moving higher within the next 293 days above 250. So there could be a lot of different attributing factors why this might have been occurring. So this is why you kind of have to research and do your own due diligence, because if someone saw this, they might see it as overwhelmingly positive. But one thing that this could be more of a hedge for is if this institution or entity is currently shorting ChargePoint, this would be a hedge. So just to protect and lock in some premiums. Kind of weird that they're choosing 293 days, but still, nonetheless, though, this did occur. So that's kind of maybe a positive thing if that's your thing. But aside from that, based on the call options that were purchased on Friday, you see kind of a consensus for it to be in roughly like the mid to second half of 2025 for it to be above 150. So a little bit of a recovery. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub 50 cents. So more pain, at least in the short term, rather than anything. Big money, not really looking at ChargePoint. So no transactions over the last 90 days on the secondary market. There was only 2 transactions on the dark pool. One was for 219,000, the other one was for 284. Regrettably, when it comes down to the dark pool, we can't see whether these are buys or sells because dark pool is supposed to be kind of anonymous. So couldn't really tell you if these are buys or sells, but nonetheless, still it shows that big money is not really involved in ChargePoint. Right now, with it at 61 cents and change, it is trading between this pivot and this S1. So 57 cents is going to be that strong support. Flip side, 73 cents is going to be the next strong target / resistance. And then no point going over the chart, honestly, because it's below all the key pivotal moving averages. So I'm going to save my breath and not go over that. But as far as this goes, these are some of the recent ratings post earnings. So you did have one 19 days ago, $1 price target. 𝗖𝗢𝗡𝗘𝗖𝗧, Stefan, who has a 37 or 39% success rating. Then the rest were right around their earnings. You have 65 cents, $73. That was done by Benchmark Michael, who has a 36% success rating. So, of course, take that with a grain of salt. But $1.50, then last month was 75 cents. So you did have right now, just within their earnings, polar opposites. You have the new highest rating recently, so that is $3. Then you have the low of 65 cents. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting scenario, but nonetheless, though, as a consensus of all the recent ratings over the last 3 months, $1.23, and that works out to be a 60, and that does work out to be a 98.87% increase from the current prices. So let me know your thoughts on ChargePoint. Was there any key highlights that you really did like from their earnings? And have you been buying recently? Have you been selling? Did their recent earnings prompt you to sell? Like, what's your kind of takeaway from all that? I feel like from their earnings call, there wasn't really anything that was stated that was going to be a instant sell. Rather, probably it did prompt some individuals to actually buy, as crazy as that sounds. But like I said, with this 10K, there's just a lot more red flags. Again, that I kind of looked at. So let me know your overall viewpoint. Don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe. I always greatly appreciate that. One final thing, if you're looking for buy signals, pop over to my Patreon to get buy signals on stocks, options, crypto. Many of them have been absolutely on point and bangers. Definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that, appreciate all you watching.